Have you ever stepped into a home so quiet, so tidy, that your heart felt like it could finally take a deep breath? Not because it was fancy, not because it was big, but because something about it whispered peace. Last fall, I visited an 80-year-old woman named Norico. She lives alone in a small home on the edge of California. No housekeeper, no robot vacuums, no expensive furniture. Yet, the moment I stepped inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Calm. Every corner of her home was simple, warm, clear. And the most surprising part? She doesn't spend her days cleaning. Instead, she lives by 7 small habits, so gentle, so ordinary, you'd almost miss them. But they're exactly what made her home feel like a soft cup of tea from her childhood in Kyoto. In this video, I'll share those 7 quiet habits. Not just to help you keep your home in order, but to show that no matter your age, you can still shape your days with intention. Because growing older doesn't mean losing control. Sometimes it's the perfect moment to reclaim it, one small choice at a time. So, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by clutter or wished for a home that feels lighter, this story might be the gentle nudge you need. Let's begin. I still remember the moment I stepped through her door. It was a chilly afternoon. Leaves crunched under my shoes as I walked up the path to Norico's house, a small one-story home tucked quietly at the end of a suburban street. I wasn't expecting much, just another visit to a kind elderly woman I'd heard about from a friend. But the moment I walked in, something inside me stilled. The air was soft, the space was calm. There was no smell of cleaning sprays, no buzzing appliances, just a faint scent of green tea and wood, and silence. Not empty silence, but peaceful silence, the kind that feels like a warm blanket pulled gently over your shoulders. I looked around. The living room was simple. A pair of slippers pointed neatly at the doorway. A teacup sat alone on the tray, wiped clean and resting just so. There were no piles, no chaos, not even a stray piece of mail. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't staged, it was lived in, but with love. And something about that shook me, because I realized this wasn't the home of someone who worked hard to keep it clean. This was the home of someone who had slowly, gently shaped her surroundings into peace. And in doing so, shaped herself. I thought about my own home, how I often blamed my mess on being too busy or too tired. But Norico was 80. She had arthritis. She lived alone. And yet, her home felt lighter than mine. I asked her, "Do you spend a lot of time cleaning?" She smiled, and with a slight bow of her head, she said, "No, I just take care of small things, and they take care of me." That sentence stayed with me, because maybe home isn't about having the perfect couch or spotless windows. Maybe it's about what the space around you is whispering into your soul. In Norico's home, the walls didn't shout. They welcomed. And in that quiet welcome, I started to wonder, what if our homes could help us age with more grace? Not by doing more, but by living with less noise. That day, I didn't just visit an old woman's house. I visited the possibility of a different way to live, and it all began in one tidy home. One of the first things I noticed in Norico's home was this: nothing wandered. The remote control was exactly in the middle of the coffee table. Her keys hung on a small wooden hook by the door. Even the broom, yes, even that, stood proudly in a quiet corner, as if it knew it belonged there. And that's when it hit me. In my own home, the remote could be under a blanket, behind a cushion, or hiding in the kitchen. My keys? Sometimes in yesterday's coat, sometimes in the fridge. I wish I were joking. I used to think that was just how life is: busy, messy, scattered. But Norico said something that stayed with me. Just like people, things need a place to belong. At first, it sounded poetic. But the more I sat with it, the more it made sense. You see, clutter doesn't start with mess. It starts with confusion. When an object has no home, it becomes a wanderer. It roams from shelf to chair to floor, until it becomes part of the background noise in our minds. And here's the secret no one told me when I was younger. Mental clutter starts with physical indecision. Every time you ask, "Where did I put that?" your brain uses energy. And when that question gets asked a dozen times a day, your mind becomes like a computer running too many tabs, slow, frustrated, drained. But when everything has a place, something shifts. You don't just find your keys faster, you find a little more clarity. And clarity, at any age, is a gift. That's why Noriko doesn't waste time tidying up. She simply returns things home. It's a small habit, but it speaks of something deeper. A relationship with space that is rooted in respect. Not control, not perfection, just quiet respect. Since that visit, I've started small. I gave the remote a permanent home. I hung my keys in one spot, and I stopped tossing my jacket across the chair. Do you know what happened? I didn't just feel more organized, I felt less lost. Like my day had fewer interruptions, fewer silent irritations I hadn't even noticed before. So if you ever feel overwhelmed in your home, start with one item, give it a place, let it belong. And in that small act, you might find that you start to belong to your space too. It happened while we were chatting. Noriko stood up to pour more tea, and as she set the pot down, she noticed a tiny drop of tea on the table. She didn't sigh. She didn't say, "I'll get it later." She simply picked up a cloth and wiped it away, gently, without a fuss. Then she sat back down as if nothing had happened. I smiled and asked, "You always clean things right away?" She nodded. "If something takes less than a minute," she said, "I do it now. That way, I don't carry it in my mind." I let those words sit, because I realized how many tiny things I carry without knowing. A cup left in the sink, a towel tossed on the chair, a bag of groceries not yet unpacked. Each one takes less than a minute, but together they become a quiet background noise, a list you're always going to get to. And that list? It's heavy. I can't tell you how many nights I've gone to bed with that invisible weight, not from big problems, just from small things I hadn't dealt with. A fork on the counter, shoes by the door, a half-finished thought in the form of a mess. But Noriko doesn't live with that noise. She doesn't give the mess time to settle. She acts, gently, immediately, and then lets it go. And that's what makes her home feel so light. Not just physically, but mentally. She said, "Unfinished things are like little threads. They pull at your peace." That 1-minute rule. It isn't about being perfect. It's about releasing tension before it builds. It's about replacing the phrase, "I'll do it later," with "I'll do it now," and be done with it. So I tried it. I stopped walking past that cup. I rinsed it. I folded the blanket. I answered that short email. It didn't change the world, but it changed my day. Because every small act of care you give to your space is an act of care you give to yourself. So here's a gentle challenge for today. Find one thing that takes less than a minute. Do it now. Feel what it's like not to carry that extra weight. You might be surprised by how light your heart feels. The moment I stepped into Noriko's kitchen, I noticed something strange. There were no overflowing drawers, no junk basket, no fridge crammed with forgotten bottles, just one pot, one pan, 2 bowls, 2 pairs of chopsticks. Even the fridge was neat, no half-used sauces, no mystery containers. I asked her, "Don't you ever buy extras? Just in case?" She smiled softly. "I used to," she said, "but I realized I was keeping more than I needed, and it was making me feel heavier." That word again, heavy. I thought about my own kitchen, the juicer I used once and never again, the set of plates I didn't even like, but kept because someone gave them to me, that drawer full of maybe one-day items. I wasn't just holding on to things, I was holding on to guilt and fear, and the strange belief that more stuff somehow meant more comfort. But Noriko lived differently. She didn't own less because she was minimalist. She owned less because she was intentional. "If it doesn't serve me today," she said, "why let it take space in my home or my mind?" That sentence shifted something deep in me. Because keeping clutter isn't just about the objects. It's about the decisions we delay, the emotions we store, the peace we postpone, waiting for the right time to let go. So I went home and opened one cabinet. Just one. And I asked myself two questions. Do I use this? Does it bring me ease? If the answer was no, I gently set it aside. I didn't throw it out with anger or shame. I let it go like you would release an old story that no longer fits. And something beautiful happened. Space appeared. Not just on the shelf, but in my chest, in my breath. Norico once said, "Less things means more room for sunlight, for rest, for you." She was right. So if you ever feel overwhelmed, not just by stuff, but by life, try letting go of one item. Not to make space on a shelf, but to make space within you. Because sometimes peace doesn't come from adding more. It comes from having enough. It was getting late. Our tea had gone cold. The sky outside turned a soft gray. I stood up to say goodbye, ready to let Norico rest. But before I reached the door, she gently raised her hand. "Just 5 minutes," she said. "I like to tidy before the day ends." She moved quietly. The tray went back into the cabinet. 2 teacups rinsed and placed upside down on the rack. The table wiped. The 2 chairs aligned like they were waiting for morning. I checked the clock. 5 minutes. Exactly. No rushing, no drama. Just a closing gesture. Like the last period at the end of a beautiful sentence. When she turned back to me, she smiled. "Now," she said, "my day is complete." And I'll be honest, it made me pause. Because for most of my adult life, I've ended days the same way. Tired, distracted, telling myself I'll clean up tomorrow. And then, the next morning, I'd wake to crumbs on the table, dishes in the sink, and a quiet feeling of defeat before the day even began. But Norico didn't carry yesterday into tomorrow. She left it where it belonged, tidied, put to rest. That 5-minute ritual wasn't about cleaning. It was about closure, about honoring the day and making space for the next. And here's what surprised me most. It changed how I slept. I used to believe I couldn't sleep because of age, or stress, or too much caffeine. But maybe it was just unfinished things whispering in the dark. So I tried it. Not deep cleaning, not scrubbing baseboards or vacuuming rugs. Just 3 small acts before bed. Wipe the counter. Wash 1 cup. Fold the throw blanket on the couch. It took me 4 minutes and 17 seconds, but I slept like I hadn't in weeks, because my space felt settled, and so did I. Norico calls it her soft goodbye to the day. I call it grace. Grace you give to yourself when you say, "This day mattered, and now I'm ready to rest." So tonight, try it. Just 5 minutes. 3 small things. A gentle closing of the chapter. You might find that the way you end your day is exactly how tomorrow begins. As I walked slowly through Norico's home, I noticed something I couldn't quite name at first. It wasn't just tidy, it was clear. Every space seemed to know what it was meant for. The dining table had nothing on it but placemats. No newspapers, no keys, no chargers. The armchair in the corner had 1 folded blanket and a single book. No bags, no unfolded laundry. The kitchen counter? Empty, except for a pot of green tea and 2 small cups. So I asked her, "Why don't you keep more things out for convenience?" She looked at me kindly. "Because if everything is everywhere, then I can't focus anywhere." That's when it clicked. She wasn't just organizing her home, she was preserving her attention. You see, many of us blur the lines between spaces. We eat on the couch. We check emails in bed. We read in the kitchen and sleep with the TV on. And then, we wonder why our lives feel scattered. But Norico taught me this. When you give each space one purpose, your mind learns how to rest. She said, "My dining table is for meals, not for sorting bills or reading the news." She had a chair just for afternoon tea, a window for quiet reflection. No space had to multitask, and because of that, neither did she. I thought about my own routines, eating lunch while answering emails, sleeping with my phone beside my pillow, folding laundry in the living room while watching TV. It felt efficient. But in truth, I was never fully anywhere. No wonder I felt overwhelmed. I wasn't just cluttering my space, I was fracturing my presence. So I tried something new. I cleared the dining table. I turned one corner into a reading nook. I moved my laptop away from the kitchen. It felt strange at first. But slowly, something shifted. When I sat at the table, I ate more mindfully. When I walked into the bedroom, I felt ready for sleep. When I read by the window, I didn't reach for my phone. Norico told me, "Our homes teach our bodies how to feel. If we let chaos bleed into every room, peace won't know where to go." She was right. So if you're feeling unsettled, don't start by cleaning. Start by redefining. Let the couch be for resting. Let the table be for eating. Let the bed be for sleep. And sleep alone. Because when your space has a purpose, your days begin to feel whole again. It was nearly bedtime. The sun had long disappeared, and the house glowed in soft golden light. I expected Noriko to say goodnight and head straight to her room, but instead, she did something else, something I hadn't seen in years. She moved through her home like someone preparing for a gentle ceremony. She folded her scarf and laid it neatly over a chair. She set a clean handkerchief on top of tomorrow's outfit. She filled a glass of water and placed it by her bedside. She checked that the doors were locked, the stove was off, the lights dimmed. No rush, no lists, just presence. A quiet ritual of care, done not out of fear, but of love. I asked her, "Do you do this every night?" She nodded. "Mornings are confused," she said, "so I clear a path for myself the night before." That sentence stopped me. Because most mornings, I stumble through the dark, reaching for socks, chasing keys, pouring cereal while brushing my teeth. My day begins in a rush, and that rush follows me like a shadow. But Noriko didn't live that way. Her mornings were soft, predictable, ready, not because she had more time, but because she made a quiet decision to respect the person she would be tomorrow. That's what night prep really is. A kindness we offer to our future selves. It doesn't have to be complicated. Since that night, I've tried 3 simple things. Choose clothes the night before. Place a cup of water by my bed. Write down one gentle intention for the next day. That's it. No planners, no alarms, no 10-step routines. And you know what? I wake up calmer. Not because my world is easier, but because I'm not waking up to chaos I created the night before. Noriko showed me that preparation isn't about perfection, it's about peace. When I prepare, she told me, I give myself one less thing to worry about. That's how I stay light, even at 80. So tonight, before you close your eyes, try just one thing. Lay out a shirt, wipe down the kitchen, put your slippers where your feet will find them. It doesn't take long, but it leaves behind something beautiful. A morning that begins with ease, and a heart that feels supported before the day even starts. Our last cup of tea had been emptied. The evening had settled like a warm shawl across the home. As I stood to say goodbye, Noriko took the cup I had used, washed it gently, and dried it with care. But before she placed it back on the shelf, she did something unexpected. She paused, held the cup between her hands, closed her eyes for just a moment, and then she pressed her palms together in a quiet gesture of thanks. I watched in silence. "What are you doing?" I asked softly. She smiled, thanking the cup for serving me today. It was so simple, so tender, and yet it shook something inside me, because I realized I had never thanked a single object in my home. Not the knife that chopped my vegetables, not the chair that supported my tired back, not even the blanket that kept me warm through the night. I had used them, but I hadn't seen them. Noriko didn't just live with less. She lived with attention, with relationship, with gratitude. She told me, I grew up with very little, so everything I had, I learned to honor. That's why her home felt sacred, not because it was spotless, but because it was loved. Each object had value, not from price, but from presence. not from style, but from service. It made me think, how many things have I kept not out of love, but out of guilt? How many times have I cluttered my space because I couldn't bear to let something go, yet never once stopped to say thank you before hiding it in a drawer? Noriko's way was different. She didn't hoard, she didn't demand perfection. She simply noticed, appreciated, released when the time was right. And that's the secret. A tidy home isn't built on control. It's built on kindness, to the space, to the objects, and ultimately, to ourselves. So now, before I put something away, I try to pause, to breathe, to whisper a silent thank you. And in doing so, I've found that the house doesn't just feel cleaner, it feels loved. Because when we honor the little things, we begin to remember, we don't need a perfect life to feel at peace. We just need to live with a little more care and a whole lot more gratitude.